Hey beautiful people, this video is about what are the 5 stages of project execution. Every successful project follows a rhythm, the 5 stages from kickoff to closeout. If you skip one, you're inviting chaos, delays, and missed opportunities. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kenny. I'm the best-selling author of The Innovation Mindset and the award-winning book 100% Capacity. I help leaders master conversations and processes that make projects succeed. And today we're going to break down the 5 stages of project execution and how to get them right. So I'm going to talk about the accepted 5 stages of project execution, but I want you to bear something in mind as you think about this. I also think about projects in terms of layers. So there's a development layer, there's a project management layer, and there's a project execution layer. And I'm putting the project execution layer at the top. The project execution layer I've talked about in a number of other videos, but I think it's really important to understand that there is a layer of decision-making, conversation, commitment, coordination, co-invention, listening, design that is absolutely critical to everything that happens in the project management and the project development layers. So we might have 5 stages that go sequentially, but we also have 3 layers that persist throughout the entire project. So I'm going to reference those for you as we go through these 5 stages. And I also want to recognize that you're probably very familiar with the development layer and the project management layer, but not necessarily familiar with the execution layer. So I'm going to use this understanding of the 5 stages of project execution to look at what I refer to as the execution layer, and we'll tie those in a way that's hopefully useful for you. So stage 1 is the initiation of the project. This usually covers a clarification of the definition of success, identification of the stakeholders, the scope, and the risks. I consider this stage to be one of the most important stages of the project. Now, the reason why I say that is because this sets up the tone for the whole project. This sets the foundation for building trust with your customers, be they internal or external, for the project. And what we tend to do with this is we tend to rush to get to what we consider to be execution, which is the doing of the project, the development of the project, the coding of the project, the research of the project. And what we miss out when we fall into that space of rush is we miss out the understanding of the foundational elements of this project. My expertise and training is, oddly enough, I'm actually a foundation engineer. Now, I worked as a foundation engineer in the early stages of my career and obviously switched into tech. But what I came in there with a great appreciation of was the importance of foundation. If your foundation isn't solid, be it a foundation for a house, a foundation for a road, a foundation for a bridge, you're going to be dealing with problems and issues for the lifetime of the house, the road, or the bridge. I believe the same thing happens with projects. If you rush into a project and you start doing what you consider to be execution or what you consider to be development, and you miss out on that first phase, and that first phase is definition of success and identification of stakeholders, scope, and risks, and also preliminary timeline. If you miss out on those conversations, what you're missing out on is the co-invention that needs to happen that sets up the context for the entire project, and the relationship building that sets up the context for the entire project. I have worked on and seen many projects where the rush to get to the execution, the development, or the understanding of execution and development is such that that first phase almost gets completely negated. So the definition of success is a deep understanding of what it is the customer considers to be the value outcome that they are looking for from this project. So if you have an internal customer or you have an external customer, there's a value outcome that that customer is looking for. There's something that is going to allow them to be able to say, that was valuable, that was successful, that delivered on what it was that I needed, that is something I want to buy, that is something I want to be able to incorporate into my department and will add a lot of value for me. In the absence of doing that, what you do is you set yourself up for failure. So your phase one of project execution, put extra emphasis on the phase one, which is the initiation. It will save you a lot of time and energy and effort and a cascading impact of breakdowns as you move through the project. The second stage is obviously planning. They're the detailed timelines, they're the resource allocation, the risk mitigation, there's the RACIC for role clarity, and a balanced schedule and contingencies. Those are standard practices in any particular project, but if those are done in isolation just with the project team and they're not done in partnership with your customer, let's assume for the purposes of this conversation you have an internal customer within your organization that you're either delivering software to that's going to be incorporated into another project, or you're delivering software to that's going to be used by the customer that's going to be of value to them. The stage two, the planning stage, is built on top of stage one. So if you think by cutting stage one short, you're going to do better planning, then I really beg you to think again. That planning, if it isn't done in collaboration with your customer, and not just as an FYI to the customer, but in direct collaboration with them, that planning is going to have a negative domino effect on the rest of the project. Stage three, which I think is mildly hilarious, is called execution. I would consider the entire project part of the project execution, but stage three is termed execution for our purposes here, and it is team coordination and what is referred to in standard project thinking as task execution. I would again ask you to go and invite you to go and look at some of my other videos and understand that that is actually commitment delivery. It's not just task execution. It is someone delivering value for a customer in small increments over the duration of a project. And of course, quality control. The traditional practices say that we have regular check-ins with stakeholders. I would say if you think of the execution layer in terms of how I think about it and how I leverage it and how I invite you to learn about it and leverage it, is you think about that in terms of ongoing conversations with the customer that don't have necessarily to do with scope, but have to do with understanding of satisfaction, understanding of what it's going to take to satisfy the customer at various different stages in the project. Those practices, if you build them into your execution phase of your project, you will have built them also into the initiation and the planning. Those then become practices for the entire team where they are treating each other like internal customers and they're flexing that muscle of delivering on customer satisfaction and value on a constant basis. Stage four, now we're assuming that the project is up and running and in execution, which is reasonably true, but I would also ask you to consider that there is an execution layer that functions in the same way as a project management layer does. And what the execution layer does is it looks to be able to increase the coherence of the project, the alignment of the project to the goals, the alignment of the project to the customer satisfaction, the alignment of the metrics to the customer satisfaction, the alignment of the project management. And we talked about technical debt in a number of other videos, but the alignment of the project management to the management of the technical debt, to the management of the milestones, to the management of the scope, to the management of the deliverables. That execution layer is what ties the whole thing together and allows for a level of coherence of practice, of language, of shared understanding across the whole project, and ensures a higher level of success in the projects where we pay attention to that execution layer. So the monitoring and controlling, and I also think it's a little bit naive for us to think that we actually have control over a project. I think we have a certain amount of control, but I think in highly complex, dynamic, agile environments, whether they're technical or scientific, there isn't a lot of control that we have on our projects. We are relying on the individuals in the projects to bring their best game to the table. And the execution layer, if we manage it carefully, is designed to help us do that. So in monitoring and controlling, what we're doing there is we're tracking against scope, schedule, and budget. We're also managing changes systematically, and we're using dashboards for real-time updates. Now that sounds lovely, and I hope you have some of those elements on your project. But what I'm much more interested in is the predictive monitoring that allows us to be able to see not when something has gone off the rails, but when something might go off the rails. If we're building an execution layer into our projects and we're building it as a practice in our projects, and we're understanding what it means, what it looks like, how to manage it, how to lead with it, how to integrate it into everything we're doing, we're positioning ourselves to be able to have more predictive capability on our projects. So the monitoring and controlling is actually monitoring, controlling, and beginning to predict where we see we're going to run into problems. Stage 5 is the closing. Now, in my experience, stage 5 actually sort of extends over a period of time and sort of tapers over time, depending on a number of different factors, depending on the level of tech debt that you're carrying on the project. And I talk about that in a number of other videos, but also depending on the way that the handover is done, whether it be to an end user or it be to another product development group within your organization. Those handovers need to be very carefully designed and planned, where we declare that the deliverables have reached a level of success criteria. And again, I talk about the metrics associated with that in another video. And we've learned, we've done our lessons learned. I think if we're doing lessons learned just at the end of the project, we're missing a huge opportunity for the feedback loops within the system. And I would expect, at least on the projects that I've seen, and increase their success possibility, is that they have those feedback loops built into the system on a constant ongoing basis. And then we release the resources. Now, you and I both know once you've built a successful project team that to disband the entire project and reassemble another one is a huge effort. There's usually a core group of people that continue on to the next and another project, and some of them that remain behind in order to be able to support the maintenance and the final transition. So this final phase, the closing phase, is usually a lot more complex than simply saying we're wrapping things up, we're checking boxes, we're releasing people, and we're declaring it done. So as you think about that process and as you think about how you design it, think of it in terms of I'm executing to criteria that I want to be able to deliver success for a customer. What happens after the customer has declared success? Because that does not mean for your purposes the project is completely done. So mastering these 5 stages with the nuances that I've talked about increases your chances of project success. Using them as a basic framework is valuable, but recognize that if they are just done to the letter of the law, they are going to be very limiting for you. If you found this video interesting and you're interested in learning more about the execution layer that I speak about, I have a white paper for you, a free white paper for you. There's a link to it below in the comments, and it's also accessible via my website. It is called Execution by Design: Unlocking the Invisible Layer of Project Success. My website is www.jenniferkenny.com. It's under the free stuff on the website. Link in the comments below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, talk to me and let me know what's useful for you, and that'll help me as I define the topics for the next videos. As you go through this process, I wish you the best of luck and every success in your project. Take care.